Why do you disturb my depressive slumber? Here to mock a dark night, main, about our damage. Whatever you're about to say, I've heard it all before. Be gone now. What? Give that here. Impossible. We're top damage again? Whatever. Top damage is alright, I guess. But we've lost any semblance of identity. Anything cool we once had has been stripped away from us, never to be seen again or put on the other tanks. And you want a guide on this piece of a job? Ugh, fine. Listen up, because I'm not repeating myself. Unless, of course, you just rewind the video. Then I guess I will repeat myself. Whatever! I hope you're accustomed to pressing 1, 2, 3 over and over again, because as a Dark Knight, that's all we do. What am I saying? Of course you're used to it. You play modern Final Fantasy XIV. Anyway, for 2 or less targets, we have the exciting 3-step combo, hard slash into Siphon Strike, and finishing with Soul Eater. Hard slash is simply the combo starter. Siphon Strike is the second hit and restores 600 MP. MP is important to Dark Knight, but we'll talk about that later. Soul Eater is the combo finisher, restoring so little HP it must be some kind of inside joke the developers made. Oh, and it increases the blood gauge by 20. We'll come back for blood later. For 3 or more targets, we have the exhilarating 2-step combo, Unleash into Stalwart Soul. Unleash is just the combo starter, while Stalwart Soul is the finisher and restores 600 MP and increases the blood gauge by 20. Well, you see, it was, but with the melee mastery trait acquired at level 94, our single target combo is actually better than our AoE combo with 2 targets, but if we get synced down to level 94, like in Legacy Ultimate Raids, then our AoE combo will be better. It's weird and inconsistent, but it is what it is. If we need to do a ranged attack, we have Unmend, which also has the very useful enhanced Unmend trait that reduces the recast time of Shadow Stride by 5 seconds for every Unmend cast. That's a joke. This trait is dogshit. Shadow Stride is a reminder of what we lost. Oh, Plunge. Will you come back to us? I even dream about you. Shadow Stride is an oGCD on a 30-second cooldown, holds 2 charges, and dashes to a target enemy within 20 arms. Good for closing the gap between you and your target. Can also be used to help with greeting, because you know you can't help yourself get that last GCD in, can you, you filthy parser? Anyway, now that basic shit is out of the way, let's talk about blood. The blood gauge holds up to 100 blood, and we can spend 50 blood on either Blood, Spiller, or Kratos. If you played Warrior, you'll be familiar with this concept, as it's literally the beast gauge, copy and pasted onto Dark Knight. Except it's easier to manage, as we don't build up nearly as much, and we don't have Infuriate. Anyway, Blood Spiller is Felcleave and Kratos is Decimate. Moving on. Fine. We use Blood Spiller for 2 or less targets, and Kratos for 3 or more. There isn't an immediate rush to use our blood gauge either, but avoid overcapping, and make sure we have around 70 before the 2-minute burst window, which we'll get into in just a moment. To complement the blood gauge, we have Delirium. Oh, what the f*** is this shit? Did you know Delirium was actually a combo finisher back in Heavensward that lowered the target's intelligence by 10% for 20 seconds? Yeah, well, nothing can be exciting anymore. So now Delirium is just an oGCD on a 60-second cooldown and grants 3 stacks of Blood Weapon and Delirium. Each Blood Weapon stack restores 600 MP and increases the blood gauge by 10 per GCD attack, while Delirium allows the execution of a new combo for 2 or less targets. Scarlet Delirium into whatever the f that word is, and finishing with Torque Lever, each hit restoring 200 MP. Very cool looking combo, but don't let that fool you. Delirium is just in a release copy and pasted onto Dark Knight. Oh, and for 3 or more targets, we can use the stacks of Delirium on Impalement, which restores 500 MP per hit. As Delirium is an offensive cooldown, we'll be using it off cooldown. If for some reason you catch yourself at 80 or more blood gauge when Delirium comes off cooldown, you're a f***ing idiot. So use Blood Spiller or Kratos, and then pop Delirium to avoid overcapping on blood. We also have Living Shadow, an oGCD on a 2-minute cooldown, and summons a shadow that does a lot of damage, and that's about it. It's just a glorified damage over time effect. Press it off cooldown. Pressing Living Shadow also grants the Scorn buff, that lasts 30 seconds and allows the execution of Disesteem, a GCD line AoE and has a range of 10 yarms. Because Scorn lasts 30 seconds and has a range of 10 yarms, we can hold on to using Disesteem for disengaging, as long as we still catch it within our party's 2-minute buffs, making it not only our hardest hitting action, but also the most versatile. At least something turned out good with Dawntrail's Dark Knight. Ugh. Anyway, let's talk MP, mana, whatever the f you want to call it, I don't care. As mentioned earlier, MP is important to Dark Knight, and no other tank really uses it or manages it. You don't count Paladins. The 3 abilities that we have that use MP is Edge of Shadow, Flood of Shadow, and the Blackest Night, all of which use 3k MP because what the f is variety. Edge of Shadow is for 2 or less targets, Flood of Shadow is for 3 or more, both of which grant Darkside, which lasts 30 seconds and can stack up to 60 seconds and gives 10% extra damage. The Blackest Night, also referred to as TBN, is on a 15-second cooldown and shields self or targeted party member for 25% of their maximum HP for 7 seconds. I don't know why it's not 8 seconds, but it isn't. Anyway, it's good for tank busters and when there is a high frequency of auto attacks on either yourself or your co-tank. If the Blackest Night breaks, we get Dark Arts. Ah, Square Enix. Why do you have to constantly remind us of what we've lost? Anyway, Dark Arts makes the next Edge of Shadow, or Flood of Shadow, cost no MP. But if it doesn't break, well, you can kiss that 3k MP goodbye, idiot. Now, hold on to your dark steeds. Before we move on, we need to expand on this. So, even though edging feels good, we shouldn't constantly edge, you gooner, but rather save that MP for the 2-minute burst window, because as a Dark Knight, we contribute a lot into raid buffs. That doesn't mean we shouldn't edge at all though, as we want to keep Darkside up 100% of the time, but not overcapping the timer either, except within the 2-minute burst window. So I usually just edge whenever my Darkside goes under 30 seconds, except if the Living Shadow timer is less than Darkside, in which case I'll just hold on to edging. The goal of the 2-minute burst window is to get 5 Edge of Shadows within buffs. How this is achievable is with the aforementioned Dark Arts. This means we'll have to break a TBN before the 2-minute burst window and make sure our Darkside timer is more than our Living Shadow timer, so we can hold on to the Dark Arts. I know I basically said this earlier and I'm just repeating myself, but structuring a guide is hard, okay? Get off my ass. Anyway, it's not always easy to find a place to break your TBN before this, however, as sometimes there's no tank buster or auto attacks. But outgoing damage is something that never really stops in Final Fantasy XIV. You just have to think outside the box. For instance, a healer or DPS is being targeted by something that will deal damage to them. To you, this barely deals any damage, because you're a tank. But to them, it deals a good amount. So what if you use TBN on them and Viola? It breaks, and you have your Dark Arts for the 2-minute burst window. Crazy. To round our damage out, we have a few more oGCDs. Salted Earth, Abyssal Drain, and Carbon Spit, and Shadowbringer. Salted Earth is on a 90-second cooldown and places a ground AoE beneath us that deals damage over time. We used to be able to place this manually, but I guess Square Enix thought we were too stupid for that. Anyway, Salted Earth also has a follow-up attack, Salt and Darkness, that just does additional potency, overall making Salted Earth a lot more potency, so it's important to catch enemies within it. Say if a boss is constantly moving from point A to point B, we'll want to place ourselves between these 2 points and then use Salted Earth to ensure it'll catch the boss from each point. Because Salted Earth is a 90-second cooldown, this puts it in a unique place as being one of the few survivors of the 1-minute and 2-minute homogenization. Because of this, there's a little bit more thinking to it, but not much. We'll still mostly use it off cooldown, and it should naturally come back up for the second potion window. But say a boss will die on the next 2-minute burst window, but our Salted Earth comes off cooldown before that. We can hold on to the Salted Earth for the 2-minute burst window to catch it within our party's raid buffs for more total damage. Ugh. What a mouthful that was about one ability. At least the next few abilities are easier to explain. Carbon Spit and Abyssal Drain. Both of these share a 60-second cooldown. For 2 or less targets, we use Carbon Spit that does single target damage and restores 600 MP. For 3 or more targets, we'll use Abyssal Drain that restores a static 600 MP and HP for each target hit. Why they couldn't make Carbon Spit also give HP? I have no idea. Probably because the developers hate Dark Knight, just like we hate life. So it's rather fitting. Use either of these off cooldown depending on the situation. Our final damage ability is Shadowbringer, which is an oGCD line that requires Dark Side for some reason. Not like we wouldn't have it up anyway, but either way, this is on a 60-second cooldown and holds 2 charges, which means we can use both charges for every 2-minute burst window, unless maybe the boss will die at the odd minute, then we can use the odd charge to get some extra damage. Anyway, let's move on to our shitty defensive oGCDs: Dark Mind, Living Dead, Dark Missionary, Oblation, and Shadowed Vigil. Dark Mind is on a 60-second cooldown and reduces magic damage taken by 20% for 10 seconds. Good on magical tank busters and even auto attacks due to its low cooldown, but utterly useless when a boss is doing physical damage, which is amazing. Thank you, Square Enix. That's great. Anyway, Living Dead is on a 300-second cooldown and is our invulnerability. What the hell is this tooltip? Seriously, we need some sort of simplified tooltip option, because what the f am I looking at? Do they seriously expect the average player to just look at this tooltip and know what the f it's trying to say? Ugh, anyway, Living Dead grants the buff Living Dead for 10 seconds. If we die with this buff, we'll instead enter Walking Dead for 10 seconds. While in Walking Dead, we cannot die, but once 10 seconds are up, we will die. To cleanse the Walking Dead, we need 99% of our total HP healed, but each GCD within Walking Dead heals us for a substantial amount, so we can cleanse it ourselves as long as there is something to attack. If we cleanse the Walking Dead early, any remaining time will be converted into the buff Undead Rebirth. While in Undead Rebirth, we cannot die. Dark Missionary is when a Dark Knight and the healer get very close. Dark Missionary is on a 90-second cooldown and reduces magic damage taken by 10% to self and nearby party members within a 30-yard radius and lasts 15 seconds. Mostly used for raid wides that are doing magical damage, or stack markers, or spreads, or anything really that is doing damage to you and your party, and is magical. Just make sure you're using this to help your healers out, please. For the love of God, make sure you're using this. Anyway, Oblation is on a 60-second cooldown, holds 2 charges, and reduces damage taken by 10% on self or targeted party member and lasts 10 seconds. We have this joke where we call this cooldown Coblation, because 10% really isn't a lot, but when doing high stakes content like Savage or Ultimate raids, it can make the difference. An extra 10% on an extremely hard-hitting tank buster can go a long way, or an extra 10% on a squishy when a healer is down or struggling to keep the party up. Hell, you could even throw 2 oblations on 2 squishies and then TB on another, reducing the damage taken of 3 party members if really needed. And no other tank can do this. We need some Ws, right? Lastly, we have Shadowed Vigil. On a 2-minute cooldown, reducing damage taken by 40% for 15 seconds and granting the buff Vigilant for 20 seconds. This heals self for a substantial amount when we drop below 50% HP or when the timer expires. Basically, this is our tank buster cooldown, although we can use it for auto attacks if a tank buster isn't coming up in the next 2 minutes, which I highly doubt, but maybe we will use Living Dead on the tank buster, which gives us an opportunity to use this on auto attacks if we're main tanking for some reason. Anyway, I go over all this shit in my old The Only Tank Guide You Ever Need, or maybe by the time you're watching this video, I have a new version of that video. Either way, both will remain somewhat relevant, so go watch them. But first finish watching this video, please. Thank you. Anyway, next up we have role actions, or what I like to call it, homogenized crap, because every tank has access to these and that makes me feel less special. This homogenized crap includes the oGCDs Rampart, Low Blow, Provoke, Interject, Reprisal, Arm's Length, and Shirt. Rampart is on a 90-second cooldown, reduces damage taken by 20%, increases healing received by 15%, and lasts 20 seconds. Basically the auto attack cooldown, although it can be paired or swapped between with Shadowed Vigil for tank busters if needed. Reprisal, why? Why is this a role action? Did you know this used to be a Dark Knight exclusive? So why can every tank use it now? Is this what you truly want, SC? To strip us Dark Knights of all of our identity? Is it? Ugh. Reprisal is on a 60-second cooldown and reduces damage dealt by 10% for nearby enemies in a 5-yard radius and lasts 15 seconds. Just like Dark Missionary, it's good for instances of damage on your party, but it has some versatility as it works on all damage types. Yippee. Arm's Length is on a 2-minute cooldown and makes us knockback immune and lasts 6 seconds. It also gives non-boss enemies a 20% slow for 15 seconds if they attack us with physical damage that isn't mentioned in the tooltip because SE is a very good developer. Anyway, this makes this cooldown not only good in raid encounters for knockback immunity, but also good in dungeon pools for the 20% slow, which helps reduce incoming damage. Low blow. Low blow. I need a moment. Low blow. You used to be my stun. You used to do damage, and you just felt good. Why did you leave me for the other tanks? What did I do wrong? Low blow is on a 25-second cooldown and stuns the target for 5 seconds. Good for stunning non-boss enemy point-blank AoEs when we don't want to dodge them, but doesn't work on boss enemies. Interject is on a 30-second cooldown and interrupts the target's cast if it can be interrupted, which is indicated by the color of the cast bar, which I'll show on screen here, so pay attention. It even has the same animation of the old Delirium. Is this some kind of sick joke, Square Enix? What the hell? Whatever. Anyway, moving on, we have Provoke, which is on a 30-second cooldown and places us on top of the enmity list of the target. Mostly used for tank swaps with our co-tank, and is usually complemented by Grit and Shirk, as we want to be in Grit when provoking and shirking our co-tank when they provoke off us. Grit is just our tank stance that significantly increases enmity generation. We want this on while main tanking and off initially when off tanking, but after the opener in an encounter, we should turn Grit on to be second in enmity, so if the main tank dies, then the boss will automatically target us rather than an unsuspecting DPS, or maybe there's a tank buster that requires us to be second in aggro, then that'll help too. Shirk is on a 2-minute cooldown and gives targeted party member 25% of our enmity, and just copy my macro or something for f***'s sake. It's usually up for every tank swap, but there are a few exceptions, in which case just turn Grit off if the boss is being provoked from us. Anyway, let's move on to the opener rotation before I blow my brains out. Alright, to begin we'll TBN ourselves or our co-tank depending on who's tanking at 3 seconds on the countdown, if the boss does enough damage to break it, otherwise we'll skip TBN and go straight into Hard Slash. We've a Strength Potion and Edge of Shadow, Siphon Strike, we've Living Shadow, Soul Eater, we've Delirium, Hard Slash, we've Salted Earth, Disesteem, we've Edge of Shadow and Shadowbringer, Scarlet Delirium, we've Carbon Spit and Edge of Shadow, Anyway, yeah, that ability. And then we've Shadowbringer and Edge of Shadow, Torque Lever, we've Salt and Darkness, Blood Spiller into Siphon Strike, and we've the last Edge of Shadow into Soul Eater. And then just continue your rotation like normal. The order here isn't super important, as long as you're getting all the important stuff under raid buffs, like the Delirium combo and Disesteem. Anyway, I'll let this play out and bother you again at the reopener. Hello, it's me again. Did you miss me? No? Good. Anyway, unfortunately, I can't TBN anyone on a dummy, so we just have to suck it up and use an early Edge of Shadow to extend our dark side. Then entering our 2-minute, we want to make sure we have 70 blood gauge, which should happen naturally as it's not exactly rocket science to manage this gauge, as it's literally easier to manage than Warrior's Beast gauge. We also want to make sure we have our 2 charges of Shadowbringer and above 7k MP. Once our living shadow is off cooldown, we'll use it immediately, then finish our combo, pop delirium and start bursting. What we want to get under raid buffs is our entire living shadow duration, 2 shadowbringers, 4 to 5 edge of shadows, the entire delirium combo, 1 disesteem and 2 blood spillers. We do actually have the flexibility to delay this burst if we need to by 1 or 2 GCDs by doing our normal combo. As long as we don't run out of time on the delirium buff or overcap our blood gauge with Soul Eater under blood weapon, we'll be fine. Alright, let's finish this thing with a stat priority. Number 1 being critical hit. Number 2, skill speed, to desired GCD speed. Once reached, it's at the bottom, like me. I mean, what? Number 3, direct hit, because we share the pain of our fellow tanks of SC's hatred towards us and having no gear with direct hit, so we meld this if we can't meld a critical hit. Number 4, determination. Sometimes it's worth to meld over direct hit to meet stat tier thresholds, but leave that to the math nuts to figure out and just follow what they say in the best in slot pages. I don't know, man. Anyway, number 5, tenacity. It's simply weaker than determination, but might see use in ultimate content due to the damage reduction, but I doubt it. What? You expect me to praise you? Oh, look how good of a Dark Knight you've become. Oh, get the hell out of here with that. We're Dark Knights and we're gloomy. We don't do that shit. But you do look kind of cute, I guess. Whatever. Anyway, if you like this video, give it a like, comment, and subscribe if you aren't already. Or don't. I don't care. Also, check out my Patreon link in the description below to become one of these kind of cool people. Anyway, what are you still doing here? Run along now. I have depression sleep to get back to. Goodbye.